Welcome to the Plant Trainers Podcast, where we're helping people improve their quality of life through nutrition and fitness. And now, your hosts, nutrition and wellness coaches, international speakers, Adam and Shoshana Chaim.
Hey, I'm Adam Chaim.
And I'm Shoshana Chaim, and we are
Propelled by Plants. Today we bring to you episode 205, We'll Travel for Vegan Food with Kristin Lajeunesse.
In today's episode of the Plant Trainers Podcast, we talk to Kristin Lajeunesse and how she will travel for vegan food. Kristin started this journey when she decided to hit the road and eat in every single vegan restaurant in the USA. Oh my God. Throughout the show, we cover what urged her to do this and, of course, vegan travel. Many people feel like they can't sustain their values while traveling, but when you're done with this show, you'll feel like a pro. You'll rock your plant-based or vegan summer voyages.
Kristin is the founder and writer for the award-winning website We'll Travel for Vegan Food. In September 2011, the New York native began traveling throughout the US in an effort to eat at every single all-vegan establishment she could find. 18 of those early consecutive travel months were spent living out of a renovated sports van affectionately named Gertie. As of July 2014, Kristin met her goal of visiting and eating in each of the 50 states, and in April 2015 became a first-time traditionally published author with her memoir, We'll Travel for Vegan Food, a young woman's solo van-dwelling mission to break free, find food, and make love. In 2016, Kristin was selected as part of a winning team for vegantravel.com to embark on an all-around-the-world journey, documenting vegan food and culture wherein she visited 20 countries. Since returning to the US, Kristin is now focused on creating the first nationally televised vegan travel show. That would be pretty cool. A self-employed restaurant marketing strategist and promotional video maker, Kristin has chosen to maintain a location-independent lifestyle indefinitely. She has a Master of Arts in Integrated Marketing Communication from Emerson College.
When I talk to people about meal planning, basically what they're telling me is it sucks. And I know because I've been there. It sucks when you don't know what to make, when your children are running around like crazy, or when you work until late at night and you come home and there's no food made, and then you want to make a recipe and you realize that you don't even have the ingredients and you have to run back to the store. This is what makes life more difficult. Life should be so much simpler. And with our meal planning mastery course, you go through videos one at a time. You have worksheets that you go through that help make meal planning simple. But not only does it make meal planning simple, it saves you time during the week. It helps you navigate the grocery store better. It helps you navigate your life better. And it helps you getting healthy, delicious food on the table in less time. So if that's something that you're interested in, click on the link below in the show notes and get our meal planning mastery course now.
And now for a moment of gratitude.
Today I'm grateful because people listen and people understand, and a lot of people feel alone, like nobody understands them and nobody really appreciates what they're trying to do in the world or supports them. And today I looked at a box for a candle. Adam opened a candle and he brought it downstairs. And I was kind of like, oh, why do we still have that in the house? It's made from beeswax. And when I checked the box, I realized that when we had gotten that as a gift, it was actually not made from beeswax. It's totally non-toxic. It's environmentally friendly. And although I was very appreciative when we first received the candle, I'm even now more appreciative that it totally falls in line with our lifestyle. And I'm very grateful for that.
So not long ago, I got you a leather purse, and it was from a vegan company called Purse King. And I just wanted to give a shout out because it's such a great company. They're doing great things for this world and for fashion, and their customer service was just so amazing. So if you're interested in vegan leather, I just recommend that you check out purseking.com, and thank you for all that you're doing, Purse King.
Kristin Lajeunesse, thank you so much for being on the Plant Trainers Podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
We're very excited to hear about your travels and to talk about everything that's been going on with you. And before we do you have a moment of gratitude that you'd like to share with everyone?
I do. I am so grateful for having for me, the most supportive immediate family that I could ask for throughout all of my unusual endeavors and interests. They've done nothing more that they've done more than what they could to support all of my efforts, no matter how silly or outlandish they seem. So I'm just so grateful to have a support system around me that enables me to live the life that I've been creating for myself.
I hope that there's lots of people listening who are the support systems as opposed to the people looking for support, because I think it's really helpful and it really helps people to, whatever it is that they're doing, whether it's a plant-based lifestyle, vegan lifestyle, or just whatever goals they have in life. When you have the support of your family, you're usually able to achieve that goal so much better when you feel the people that love you are there for you.
Yeah, and sometimes it can even be, it can extend so much beyond the family too. I have some wonderful friends who I've met through my journeys, and we've become support systems for one another. So even if you out there don't have an immediate family member who you can pull that energy from, just know that there's someone around the corner who's in your same space or in a different place that they can hold that energy for you too.
That's where social media also helps, because I know lots of people have groups and you get to know the people in the groups, especially when you run a group. Like we run Healthy Plant-Based Families, and we run Plant-Based Health, Nutrition, and Fitness, and we get to know the people in the group, and it's more than just posting. You're interacting and you're having conversations, and that really helps too. It's always great to be able to reach out and touch someone, but when you can't touch them physically, to touch them virtually, it kind of goes far too. So we were at the New York Food Fest, and we were talking a little bit there, and I said, how was it eating in so many restaurants across the US? And you said that it basically killed cooking for yourself.
Well, it spoiled it, I suppose. I should preface this by saying I was never really a cook to begin with. I did dabble in baking a little bit shortly after becoming vegan. I have had a major sweet tooth most of my life, and although that's changing in recent months, which is interesting. But yeah, I definitely would tend toward going out to eat as it was, which of course is part of the reason that sparked my interest in trying to eat at every single vegan restaurant in the country when that idea came to me. But then by the end of that road trip, I had such a hard time having any motivation cooking for myself. I just wanted to continue to go out to eat. And of course, that wasn't necessarily the most healthy option either.
So I think it's very interesting what you're doing and what you've done. And will travel for vegan food is what you're doing. And a lot of people love to travel. Most people love to eat. And you've put those two concepts together and you're exploring the world. So how did you decide to stop what you were doing and just go get it, go do it?
It kind of came to me in a rush. I was fresh out of grad school. I had a full-time 9-to-5 desk job in a literal cubicle in Boston where I was living at the time. It was with an animal welfare organization, so I was doing work that I believed in. I had a live-in partner, a romantic partner. That relationship was solid. But something kind of felt unsettled just internally. I didn't know what that was or where it was coming from, because life on the outside was great. And around that time that I had this kind of unsettled feeling bubbling up, I stumbled upon some books and blogs by people that called themselves lifestyle designers. And these were people that were creating their lives around their greatest passions. They were traveling all the time. They had passive income. They made it look and sound so easy and luxurious. And not that I necessarily craved an easy life per se, but there was something obviously that was pushing me to kind of almost obsessively read about what these people were doing and start checking out their books and things. So one afternoon, I was reading a chapter from The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, which is actually quite a good book if you haven't read it. Mm-hmm. And I finished reading a chapter, went back to my desk at work, and when I sat down, the words "will travel for vegan food" just kind of appeared in front of me. And it was like an aha moment where I sat up and I said, oh my gosh, I know exactly what I need to do. I emailed my parents right away and I said, you guys, I have the best idea. I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to move into a van and I'm going to try to eat at every vegan restaurant in the country. So it took a few days for my dad to reply, and I'm very close with my parents. So for them to have a lengthy pause between something that profound that I felt was this big idea, it felt like a while. And he just replied and said, cool idea. So I don't think that they thought I was serious. I don't know that I thought I was serious about it, but making a long story much shorter, fast forward about 8 months later, I did give my notice at work. I did a crowdfunding campaign on Kickstarter to raise money to buy the van. My dad helped me renovate the van, and before I knew it, I was off on the road trip.
So what were you leaving behind? You were leaving behind a 9-to-5 that you loved, you were leaving behind a romantic partner. Like, talk us through that. How was it leaving things that were working so well for you?
Well, once the idea came to me, I couldn't stop thinking about it, and it just felt almost necessary. It was one of those, and I've had that feeling before, and prior to this particular experience, where when I have this kind of bug or the sensation of I need to go to grad school at Emerson College in Boston, I need to, and I had uprooted a relationship to do that as well. And then when this idea came to me, it was more, it just felt like something that was absolutely necessary, and I don't know why. So leaving my job wasn't too bad, because I very quickly learned that the structure of the 9 to 5 thing and not being able to move through the organization as quickly as I wanted to in terms of what I thought I could add value in different things, I found that a little frustrating. So I was happy to kind of put my energy into something that felt more passion driven. So that was okay. Ending the relationship was definitely a bit of a challenge. I had been dating Joe for 3 years by the time I left. And, of course, we had our bumpy moments throughout those 3 years. But ultimately, reflecting on it, I think we were mostly together out of convenience that last year versus like a true, deep, passionate love or something. So I think that's why it was, we sat down and we talked about it. I encouraged him to come with me. I didn't want to go by myself. And he wasn't vegan. Wasn't interested in living in a vehicle for an unknown period of time. And so it just didn't make sense. And so we kind of agreed together that it would be better if we ended things when I left. And by that point, we probably had that conversation about 4 to 6 months before I left. So there was a lot of prep time, we did have a lot of emotional nights where we just talked about what it would be like after I left and different things like that. So it was a process. It wasn't, even though it happened within a year, which is a pretty short amount of time in retrospect, it still was, I was so excited and so hooked on doing this that it made kind of moving through that a little easier.
So in your book trailer, you have a little racy, romantic clip in there. Is that Joe?
That is not Joe. That represents my first one-night stand, which I talk about in my book.
Okay.
Yes.
So those people who are interested in that story should definitely, for lots of reasons, should get a hold of the book. But
jump to chapter 8, yeah.
Yeah. But if you know somebody who's into those kinds of books, this might help them get more into veganism by hooking them in. Adam's sitting here rolling his eyes. He's like, what's with you women? Chapter,
yeah. It is. I told my dad to skip that chapter. I don't know if he did. Let's just hope so.
Yeah, let's hope he did.
So it's interesting that the 4-hour work week was something that really struck a chord with you, and it does with a lot of people. It's a very interesting concept, but I think a lot of people think that, okay, I'm just going to quit my job and go, and life is just going to fall into place. But I don't think it really works that way. It didn't just happen so quickly for you. It took 8 months to get going, and it was a bit of a process to get yourself set up. And correct me if I'm wrong with all that, but to this point, how long have you been going? How many restaurants have you hit? And how's that been going for you?
Well, yeah, to address your first point there, it definitely wasn't just I'm going to quit and go. Now, granted, given my supportive family and what I had saved up and being able to host a successful Kickstarter, that gave me some, privilege and opportunity that otherwise it might take longer or be harder for other people to access. So in that regard, it did happen pretty quickly. And somehow, I still don't even know how it all worked out, but the first 2 years of my formal full-time travel, which was primarily living in the van with the goal of eating at all these restaurants, that entire 2 years I was living off of donations. There was one person in particular that really wanted to see it happen, so he would check in with me periodically, and if I needed a bump, he would donate more money. So I was extremely fortunate to have multiple people like that in my corner. But with the 4-hour work week and other people like Chris Guillebeau, Gary Vaynerchuk, Pat Flynn, Marie Forleo, who are also inspirations for me, they do talk of, get up and go, do this thing, but they also make it clear that there's a lot of hustle involved. And so when the road trip ended, so I've been traveling, to answer your other question, I've been traveling full-time now for almost 6 years. It'll be 6 years in October. And once the road trip ended and the donations stopped coming in, I had to figure out how I was going to keep going. Because initially, my plan was, I'll go back to my quote-unquote regular life. I'll probably go back to Boston, find another job, and settle back in. But of course, once I had that flavor in my mouth of being able to live minimalistically, nomadically, and meeting so many amazing people, once that was part of my lifestyle versus just a passion project, there's no way I could go back. So I started playing around with different business ideas and became self-employed. And that's taken on a lot of different varieties, which we can talk about later if you'd like. There's a lot of incarnations of how I've been working for myself in the last 3.5 years since the road trip ended. But gosh, well, during the road trip, those 2 years, I ate at 547 fully vegan restaurants. And then, of course, since then, I've continued to nomad around. I was traveling abroad for 8 months in 2016. So to answer your question about the number of restaurants, I guess it'll be well over the thousands at this point.
Have you been up here in Canada?
Yep, I've visited the bigger obvious cities, Montreal, Vancouver, and Toronto, and Ottawa.
Okay, so have you been here recently? Have you eaten at Doomie's?
I have not eaten at the Doomie's in Toronto, but I've been to the one in LA before.
And what do we like in Montreal? Crudescence?
Ooh, yeah, that place is great.
That's a good one. Yeah, there's some good ones. We're up here in Toronto, and we go to Montreal quite frequently, so we've done a lot between here and there and in between, which is awesome.
Nice.
So when you go to these restaurants, they're not always the healthiest types of foods. So I'm wondering, eating in these places all the time or consistently, I wonder if that has any impact on your health. Did you come across any weight gain, health challenges? Did you get sick ever? How did you feel after eating in these restaurants? Is it any different from being at home?
Sure. Yeah, of course. Within the first year of the trip, because my general rule, if you will, if there was a rule, was if it's vegan, I'll eat it. So I was eating anything and everything during the first year in particular of the road trip. And of course, I didn't know if I'd ever go back to this one restaurant or that restaurant, so I'd have to get dessert. And by the end of the first full year of the trip, I had gained 25 pounds. And I only really noticed because I went through kind of the spring, summertime, and then by the time fall came, when I was not wearing as many sundresses and trying to fit back into my pants, I realized they didn't fit anymore. And that was a bit devastating. But I've been vegan it'll be 11 years in August that I've been vegan. And I never, until the last maybe 2 years, I've never really thought about the health side of it personally. What sparked the whole thing beyond, I was vegetarian for 8 years and then becoming vegan after that, it was more for the animals and the environment. And I couldn't really care so much. I benefited, obviously, from the health aspects of not consuming certain animal products, of course, but I didn't prioritize that as a thing. And like I said before, I had major sweet tooth. So I was eating all the vegan things, regardless of what they were. And yeah, I think I'm kind of going off on a tangent now, but
no, but I mean, we all know that vegan food is not necessarily healthy. You could
Right.
eat a vegan diet and you could be eating Oreos and chips.
Sure.
And there's lots of restaurants that, while they produce incredibly delicious vegan food, sometimes it has a lot of oil in it. Sometimes it has a lot of sugar. Sometimes things are processed more than others.
Or it's void of certain things like other nutrients and fruits and vegetables and greens and things like that.
Right. So I'm not going to bash or step on any vegan restaurants because they're fantastic once in a while. But I'm just thinking, if you're doing that all the time, you are not necessarily putting your health in a good place. So I was just curious, the weight gain I would think would be something that would happen. Did you ever do any blood tests throughout? Have you ever done that? Are you void of any nutrients because of it, or were you fine? I guess you're fine.
Energy level?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm fine. Aside from feeling for sure tired during the road trip, of course, I didn't know the source of it necessarily. I wasn't attributing it to just the weight gain or eating unhealthfully because I was living in a vehicle. I was sleeping terribly at night because I was worried that someone would break in every night. So I was having these nightmares. And so there are probably a lot of contributors to the road trip itself. Again, that 2-year period. But then once that ended, and I was still mostly going out to eat in different places when I was traveling around and continuing the journey, I was definitely more conscious of what I was putting into my body after that 2-year formal road trip, because I had noticed the weight gain and was feeling self-conscious about it. So the nice thing is, my shtick is that I go to wherever the vegan food is, and typically I like slow travel. So I'll be in one place for 3 to 6 months at a time, and I'll often seek out cities that have a variety of foods, that I'm not just having the junky stuff all the time anymore.
Right. And I know I travel every summer. I go 4 to 6 weeks overseas. And when I'm in those cities, I also look for those vegan restaurants because it's always exciting to me to be able to find somewhere where I know I can eat anything off the menu and not have to worry about it. But at the same time, during the day, I usually will grab some Whole Foods out of a grocery store and just eat it as I'm walking in a park. Or
Yeah.
I'll see a fruit stand on the corner. Like when I was in Athens, they had those coconut drips, and I would just grab a chunk of coconut and eat it, like, so there's a difference between eating in a vegan restaurant and eating healthy from the grocery store or the fruit stands or the farmers markets. And I just thought that was an important point to bring up so people that are listening understand that just because we're eating at a vegan restaurant, it doesn't mean that we're eating in a healthy way all the time. So we just have to be aware of that.
Right, for sure. Yeah.
And then also bringing up, traveling to Athens, traveling overseas, traveling through the US, there's always options. So I think a lot of people who want to start their either plant-based journey or their vegan journey, and they're like, well, I'll do it for a few days, but then I'm going on vacation. So I'll just make do with what I have on vacation. And of course, people need to do what they're comfortable doing. And if it means, they make a couple of choices here and there that they feel that they can't get out of, then that's one thing. But generally speaking, I mean, we've eaten plant-based everywhere we've gone, whether it be from the grocery store or from restaurants or working with restaurants to make something happen. So let's talk a little bit about some of the tips that we could give people when it comes to traveling so that they don't have to feel like they have to put their goals on hold just because they're going on vacation this summer.
Yeah, well, one of the traps can be the airport or extended travel en route, if you have a lot of layovers or however you're getting around. So I found that sometimes I'm in a pinch if I don't plan ahead. So my personal rule is to always make sure that I have a couple of like apples or Vega bars or whatever your favorite, like vegan protein bar or whatever you like to snack on, peanuts even. Always have something kind of in a pocket or something accessible that's in your carry-on or something like that. So if you are suddenly struck with hunger and didn't realize how long it's been, or it's a weird time change or something, that you at least have something you can snack on without feeling like, oh no, there's nothing on the in-flight menu that I can get. I'm just going to either starve or I have to eat non-vegan food. So I always just carry something with me just to have in my back pocket.
So what I've noticed about my travel days is that, like, I'll normally pack, whatever I can. If I don't want to bring Tupperware with me, then I'll wrap it up. But I'll pack a peanut butter sandwich and I'll bring apples and bananas. But I find that those types of foods are much more accessible now in airports, in train stations. On those travel days, there'll be bananas, or we see a sign when we go to our airport and it says a free banana with a bottle of Smart Water. Right? And we're like, wow, they're giving away bananas. This is awesome. So if you don't have with you, then you can have that. And what I also wanted to say about that is that we need to sometimes when we're traveling, think outside the box and not think of a meal as sitting down with a fork and knife and cutting our food, and get out of those, this is what lunch is, this is what dinner is, and just think like, I'm putting food in my body, the food tastes good, and I'm getting the calories I need to have the energy that I need until my next meal. So sometimes we kind of need to think outside the box. But also on the in-flight, I saw when I went to New York, they had hummus with crackers, and it was completely vegan also. If you're gluten-free, it makes it a little bit more difficult, but I find that there are vegan options kind of everywhere. You just might have to pay $20,000 for it.
$20,000 for this apple slice.
Exactly. Good. So what about once you're in a city? Do you do planning ahead of time, or do you just wait till you get there?
I usually do a little bit of pre-planning, but again, since I typically go to where the food is, where the vegan food is, it's usually not so much of a thing. For me, it's more the in-between traveling to get there that sometimes I feel like I might get stuck, and so that planning ahead is good. But yeah, the last year or so, I really just would kind of plunk down somewhere and then settle into wherever I was staying and then do research and figure out what was nearby. And also, I would kind of time it based on if I knew I would be hungry when I would get in. Sometimes I would just take like a shuttle or something right to a restaurant or whatever. So, but yeah, a little bit of planning ahead just to scout and make sure that there are, in fact, a few vegan options, vegan friendly places. And then once I get there, I really kind of dig in. I also like to connect. That's the other nice thing about social media that we were mentioning earlier. I really like to connect with vegans and vegan communities in other places before I get there, because oftentimes I can find someone who is happy to show me around and introduce me to kind of those hole in the wall places that you might otherwise not know if you're from out of town.
You mean there's friendly vegans?
I know, it's shocking. You would be surprised. There are some nice ones out there.
So of all the places you visited, which was your favorite vegan-friendly city?
Well, in terms of quantity and quality, I'd say Berlin is definitely up there. And maybe less in quantity, but amazing in quality is Hoi An, Vietnam. I was really blown away with how amazing the vegan food there was, and just kind of inherently the cuisine there. There are a lot of locals and indigenous people that were making vegan food. That's what they eat. They don't necessarily label it vegan, but the local vegan said this food translates as that, and it means this, and people here love having this on Sundays or whatever it was. So I really found that interesting. And of course, the good old Portland, Oregon is an amazing destination for vegans still. Oh, and just a quick shout out to Philadelphia. I feel like it doesn't get enough love. Philly is booming with vegan options. I love that city. It's so walkable. So many varieties of vegan cuisine. They have a vegan pizzeria, coffee shop, juice bar, fine dining, fast, casual, kind of everything you could want, vegan style, they have in Philly. I love that place.
And if you had to choose one of your favorite restaurant, which one would it be?
Oh, that gets increasingly tough to answer the more that I travel around.
Well, if you're over 547 restaurants, I would assume that it would be a tough one to answer.
Yeah, well, there's one that always sticks with me. It's a place called Charlie Was a Sinner, and it's in Philadelphia.
Okay.
Looks like we need to head out to Philly.
Yeah.
So back in the day, before we were completely plant-based, even before we had children, we traveled a lot, and extensive travel in Asia as well. So when we were in Vietnam, we were there for 2 days, and then our family, some cousins and aunts and uncles came to visit us, and one of the daughters was vegetarian. So with our broken English and our little guidebook, we somehow told the people in this little hole-in-the-wall restaurant that we needed everything to contain no egg, no meat, no right, whatever. And of course, there was no dairy. So, we were in this little hole in the wall, and they finally figured out what we were saying, and we had morning glory and tofu and all these crazy flavors that we'd never really tasted before. And they just kept bringing the food. And we're looking at each other being like, okay, this is our first date together. We're going to blow through the budget. On the first day, we're eating like kings and queens. And it was the most amazing meal. And we didn't feel disgusting after. We felt great. And then the bill comes and it's like $5 US for the 7 of us.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. So, you think these smaller countries, not first world countries, they get it. They know what to feed you. You just need to get the message across. They know what to feed you, and it's not going to cost an arm and a leg either.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the nice thing about Southeast Asia. Our Western money goes a long way there.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Even the Canadian dollar.
Yes.
So earlier you mentioned that you're doing some other things now other than just traveling, and your book is We'll Travel for Vegan Food, and we'll put a link to that in our show notes. But maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you're doing now.
Sure. Well, since the road trip ended, as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to maintain a mobile lifestyle. So I started my own business where I was doing some coaching and consulting with small business owners and entrepreneurs on their marketing, because my graduate degree, my background is in marketing communication. So I thought, okay, maybe I can merge these things together. And while I'm traveling around, I can help people out either virtually or in person. So it's taken on a lot of different variations of what that looks like. But today, my primary income is through some freelance work with farm animal rights movement. I also When I land in a new place, I will connect with the local vegan restaurants and pitch them the idea of a promotional video. And if they'd like to pay for a promo video and also have some push through my social media channels. So I'm also making some money by creating video content for vegan restaurants or vegan-friendly restaurants when I land in each city. And also just maintaining the Will Travel for Vegan Food brand. I would really love to, this is kind of a goal I'm trying to voice more because I feel like if I say it out loud, it might get it there sooner, but I would love to create the first internationally televised vegan travel show and be the host of a proper vegan travel show. So that's kind of what I'm working toward right now. I have my sub kind of sources of income on the side, but then I'm really putting most of my energy into crowdfunding through my Patreon account to get support in order to hire people that can help me make this happen. So for the month of June, I'm going to be doing a dance-a-thon, like almost like a telethon, but dancing. Instead of answering calls, I'm going to be dancing live on my Facebook page every day. To try to raise money through Patreon, and I'm going to be pushing people to the Patreon page through dance. So I haven't even sorted out how that's going to work yet, but starting tomorrow, I will be dancing live on Facebook.
Interesting.
So this comes out June 30th. So if you're listening to this now, then get on her Facebook page, see her dancing today. You have to do it today.
Yep, today will be the last day.
Well, that sounds great. We're going to link to that in the show notes. So if anybody wants to support you in your Patreon account and some of those other things that you're working on, if that piques anybody's interest, if they know anybody who can benefit from your services, then they should definitely pass on the information. And all of that will be at planttrainers.com in our show notes.
Cool. Thank you.
No problem. So what we would like to do is we'd like to encourage everybody to continue on with their goals, whether it be from a vegan standpoint or a plant-based standpoint, and not be shied away because of your travel plans that you have this summer. As you've heard throughout this podcast, it's definitely something that you can do. You can plan ahead or you can just arrive depending on what you are. I think families will tend to plan ahead a little bit more, and individuals might just arrive and kind of, explore and make it more of an adventure that way. I know that for me, a lot of my clients that I work with personally one-on-one, when they're going to travel, I scope out the area for them. I scope out the restaurants. I show them what they can eat on menus that are from Omni restaurants or, where the restaurants are that they can go to. So that's definitely something helpful for people as well if they are working with a health coach. And we would like to thank you so much for your time today, being here with us. And where can people find you if they are looking to follow you on social media or get in touch with you?
Sure. Well, it's all over Will Travel for Vegan Food. If you Google that, you'll find me on all the social medias. The shorthand for Twitter and Instagram is at WTF Vegan Food, which of course stands for Will Travel for. And
it took me a while to figure that one out.
Yeah, it stumps people sometimes. It just kind of worked out that way. And I thought, I'll get some people who are hung up on it or try to figure out, does that mean what I think it means? And so I love that it kind of works that way.
What the?
Anyway, continue. Sorry.
No, that's fine. So Will Travel for Vegan Food on all the platforms. I'm most active on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and I try to post 1 to 2 times a week on YouTube videos of where I am around the world.
Sounds great. And we've just followed you on Instagram, so I'm looking forward to your travels there as well. Thank you again so much for everything that you're doing in terms of the farming movement, in terms of inspiring people, and for taking the time to be with us today and inspiring our listeners as well.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Thanks, Kristin.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this edition of the Plant Trainers Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or any other podcast listening platforms. We appreciate the feedback we receive from you. Every time we get a 5-star rating or review on iTunes from one of our fans, it ensures other people will find us too. Thanks to our patrons. To become a patron, visit www.patreon.com/planttrainers. Even supporting us with $1 really makes a difference. Connect and follow us on Instagram and Twitter Twitter @PlantTrainers. Like Plant Trainers on Facebook, join our newsletter, and check out our website at www.planttrainers.com for awesome plant-based recipes and a list of our services. Email your questions to info@planttrainers.com so we can answer them on our upcoming Facebook Lives. We hope we've inspired you today. Join us again next time, and have a healthy day.